all you Splinterheads. Welcome back. Thanks for dropping by. I do appreciate your time. A little bit more land content this week because I haven't been doing enough. Actually, I haven't been doing enough from the perspective of a group that people have said have been left out as far as coverage goes, and that is the amount of people who own keeps and castles. And I'll say I'm guilty because I've never thought that I would have enough money to invest in getting a keep or castle. Never got lucky enough whenever I revealed mine. But with that said, it is the truth. I haven't really done any coverage on it. So I'm going to remedy that now. Let's go ahead and start with the reason why I'm doing this video. It was a comment on a recent video that I had posted. And the video was the one where I was asking, are you ready for Land 1.5 to go live? In other words, to feed your monsters and to stake and everything like that. So this comment is from Legions of Angels PH, or also known as Garut. And I'll just read it. Another great content, thumbs up, different topic, but not sure if you've covered it. What if you have a keep? Would you put all your cards on them or use the good cards on other lands, magical, occupied, or mythical? Would the keep still earn the standard taxes on every producing plots? Any additional info on castles, keeps would be appreciated. Not much content creators sharing thoughts about castles and keeps. Thanks in advance. Okay, well, let's start with what we know, and that's what's in the white paper, okay? And if you go to the white paper, 1.5 white paper, and go into the castles and keeps section. Now, I'm going to read certain portions of this because I want to be exact, and then I'm going to extrapolate on it, okay? So what we know at the basics are these. The reason why you would want to invest in a castle or keep, and I call it investment because at their prices, it is an investment, okay? The main thing you're going to be doing when you have a castle or a keep is you're going to be earning taxes. And those taxes come in the form of the three different things that people can mine or grow under 1.5. And those three things are the research, SPS, and grain, okay? And your taxes coming back to your castle or your keep is going to be in the form of a percentage on those three items, okay? So that's the basics. That's why you would want a castle or a keep if you like that idea, okay? So let's go ahead and get into this section a little bit. This might be a little bit of a longer video, but I wanted to be clear and I want to be concise with what we know. And then at the end, I'll wrap up and I'll try to answer what I would do if I had a castle or a keep, to his point. Okay, the first part of this is just storyline, basically creating a story for the castles and keeps. The castles and keeps are supposedly getting their taxes because they keep the buildings, they manage the magic that keeps the buildings up and running, okay? And each tract of land, 100 contiguous plots, will contain exactly one castle or one keep, okay? And there's going to be one castle in the whole region, which is 1,000 contiguous plots. So in one region, there's going to be 9 keeps and one castle. Okay, this we know. Everybody's probably aware of that, okay? Then they lay out that in time, as time goes along, there's going to be an organization of people who own castles and keeps, and this is going to be known as the League of Verico, okay? If this is just storyline, that's fine. I don't know whether that's going to be some kind of, what that's going to happen with that in the future, but that's also a fact. Okay, so land plots with either a castle or keep will still require cards to work on them, a power source and or Rooney, and staked DEC in order to produce resources for the plot owner. However, they will not need to be cleared like other plots, and they produce resources in a different way. Okay, so right up front, if you stake out your castle or keep, you're going to be able to be up and running without having to worry about paying your monsters and waiting the time to clear the land, or paying for time crystals or using the time crystals you have for that castle to keep. You can use it elsewhere. Okay, we know this. Okay, so rather than producing resources directly like cards working on other land plots, cards working in a castle or keep building will instead work to maintain and operate the magical network between the buildings throughout the continent. That's that whole storyline thing I was talking about. Okay, so they will retain a portion of the resource production taxes collected from the other land plots in the tract or region for the castle or keep owner. Please note that any resources collected via taxes which are not captured by a castle or keep owner will be burned. Okay, so this goes into the whole tax collection thing. We will cover that next because it's heavily related with what you earn as a castle and keep owner. Now, I will say here that another comment received on a different video, but related to this by Darkest Night this week, is the fact on the point of what's the difference between owning a plot in a very active zone or region and owning a plot in a kind of inactive region. In other words, flippers are flipping the plots, and some are sitting fallow, and there's just not a whole lot of action going on. One of the main differences is going to be that if you are a castle or keep owner, you're going to want, in my estimation, you're going to want that area, that region, where the tract, whatever you're in, to be active, because the more people that are staked out and using that land, the more taxes you're drawing in. Common sense. Okay, so let's go back to this. Okay, so while castles and keeps will not receive any production boosts for their rarity, worker cards will still receive a based production boost or penalty based on their terrain preferences, and players will be able to boost the production of their workers further on castle and keep plots using runes, titles, and totems in the same way as other land plots. Okay, now, right up front, the main thing there is that you will not get any production boost for the rarity of the land. Okay, so you're going to get your stock percentages of taxes that are coming in, and then as we will see later, it's all going to be dictated by what you have staked on that land. So the better the cards, the more production points you have there, the higher percentage of those taxes you're going to rake in and that are not going to be burned off. Okay, so let's go further. In castles, the total resource production tax rate is 10% for all grain, SPS, and research produced on land plots. So 20% of that total tax income in each of the three resources from all land plots within the entire region, except for the keeps, is available to be earned by a castle owner. That means that the castle owner has the potential to earn up to 2% of all resource production from the other 990 plots in the region. Plus, another way, a castle owner has the potential to earn resources equivalent to nearly 20 other plots. And they give the math here. And if you're interested, and I would hope if you had a castle or keep, you would already have this memorized. But this is all good information for the rest of us. So as we know, because we're taxpayers to the castles and keeps, how they work and how the storyline is building and how this will build going into 2.0. Okay, because then the taxes will be used for something else, and then we'll be able to stake on different buildings and things like that. A lot to come, but if you're interested in the exact numbers, it's right here. So they give some examples. Castles will also additionally act as a keep with regard to capturing taxes from the land plots within the same tract as the castle building. The calculations for how keeps capture taxes for the land plots with the plots are described below. We're getting ready to go in that. So what that means is the person that owns that castle, you're capturing the castle taxes as well as the keep taxes for that tract. So, you know, that's one of the main reasons why the castles are so expensive. Keeps, going on into keeps, their tax rate is 10%. Produced on land plots. 50% of that total income, tax income in each of those three resources, once again, from all other land plots within the tract, is available to be earned by the keep owner. Okay. This means that a keep owner has the potential to earn up to 5% of all the resource production for the other 99 plots in that tract. Okay, and then they go in and give some examples and give the math here. You can this math is all going to fluctuate because, as I said again, this depends upon how active that region or that tract is, how much tax income you have coming in, and it very similar. It simulates real life. The more business you have going on in your county, the more county taxes come in, and so forth. So let's see here. Now, they finish off by saying that, if you look at the math, you might think that castle owners get less. But while it may at first appear that keep owners receive more than castle owners for the same worker cards, please keep in mind that castle owners receive a cut of the taxes for 10 times more plots. Additionally, keeps will have 3 times. Oh, I forgot to tell you that. The castles and keeps have a bonus to finding totem fragments, okay? And the castle is a 10 times increased chance for finding fragments and 3 times increased chance for the higher rarity fragments, whereas keeps have 3 times increased chance of totem fragments and 1.5 times increased chance of higher rarity fragments. Okay, this is all the basics, okay? Now, the next thing I want to cover is taxes, or our taxes, okay? This is pretty straightforward. In phase 1.5, a 10% tax will be collected on all resource production. And we've talked about this in the past when I went over in the harvesting video, I believe. By the local castles and keeps, taxes go towards paying for the infrastructure, this whole storyline thing. And they go on to say that in phase 2, it is planned that players within each region will have the opportunity to contribute resources to upgrade sub-buildings in their local castles and keeps. That's more to come in 2.0. One question I kind of had, and I'm leaning towards, so let's go back to when you do a claim or when you do a harvest. And I am looking for, okay, here we go, harvest. Okay, we know that you can do harvest once per day or as little as once per week. Okay, we know that. And we know that, I've went over this, if you want this in greater detail, go back to the video that I have on this. But we know that you're going to have a set production point, how much with bonuses that particular land can produce. And then when you go to harvest, it's going to check against several things. Okay, so one of those things is, do you have the DEC staked for the proper amount for the cards you have staked on the land? And if you don't, then you stand to not make 100%, or you stand to not harvest 100% of the total, and the rest would be burnt. Okay, so let's look at this here. The harvesting algorithm will look at whether or not the player has enough DEC tokens staked in the region and enough grain in the region to cover the power and food requirements for the workers. If the player does not have enough DEC staked, then the harvest output will be reduced proportionally. For example, if the player has 75% of the total amount of staked DEC that is required, then the harvest output will be reduced by 25%. Okay, so we know this already, but why am I bringing it up now? Because this directly affects you as a castle or keep owner, what you're making. Now, the way it's worded, it's not clear whether you're taxed on the full amount, the total amount of possible you've grown or you've mined during that period, or on what you actually harvested. So say, for instance, you grew 10,000 grain, but due to DEC staking and or grain requirements or whatever, you only harvested 9,000. Are you taxed on the 10,000 or are you taxed on the 9,000? Logic would say on the 9,000, but due to the wording, the way I'm reading it, it's not clear. So I'll stick with they're probably going to be taxed on the 9,000 because that extra 1,000 is going to be burned off the top. But once again, that remains to be seen. Okay, so now that we've covered all the basics that we know, okay, without trying to speculate on much of that, okay, that's all straight from the white paper. Let's go back to the original question at hand. Would you put all your good cards on the castle or keep, or use the good cards on your other lands, magical, occupied, or mythical? Would the keep still earn the tax standard? Let's cover the first question first, okay? I've got to tell you this. If I was in the position to have a castle or keep, I would definitely stake that out as best you can, okay? The best cards that you can put on there, the best cards that you can afford, and we've talked about this a bunch. We've talked about looking at your total investment, how many plots you have, divided out, how much money you have, what you're going to spread thin on your whole. I think there's a lot of people that are in a situation where they just don't have enough, whether it be DEC or cards or what have you, to spread across your lands. I would make a concerted effort to make that castle or keep your best staked out property. Okay. Now there might be people who are in the same situation with a castle or keep, and maybe I'm wrong, but that's the way I would go about it. So in the comments, if you own a castle or keep, and you think maybe I'm not flying right here, go ahead and leave a comment on what you're doing or what you think I'm wrong or something like that. But due to the way that your soul, what you're bringing in is solely dedicated to how much you have staked on that castle or keep, I would try to pump it up as high as possible. Because, on that keep or on that castle, you're drawing in a mixture of SPS, research tokens, and grain. Obviously, you're going to have some other lands that just in case you're not bringing in enough grain at the very beginning, I would have enough land staked around to make enough grain to run that, to feed the monsters you have staked on that. But my basic answer there would have to be you got to put all your effort into staking out that land as good as possible. Okay, so the next question would be, would the keep still earn the standard taxes on every producing plots? I think this person is not an English primary, and I give all props to people who speak more than one language, but I'm going to try to figure out what is meant here. First of all, your castle or your keep is going to earn that standard percentage. And of that percentage, what you actually take in is going to be dictated by how much you have staked, how much production points you have staked. So the higher your production points staked in that castle or keep, the more the taxes you're going to keep. So hence my last statement, I would stake it out as good as possible. As far as the other plots around, if you have multiple plots, you're going to find that you're going to be in kind of a weird situation in that if you're in the same region, if you have your castle, or if you're in the same tract that you have your keep, you're going to earn taxes off of yourself. So you might have 5 or 10 plots around your keep, and if you do, then what you're producing, you're paying taxes to yourself. So it's kind of a weird situation, but you're going to be getting that back anyway. So the main things I would be focused on, since we've also been talking about the lack of a secondary grain type market in 1.5, you're going to be able to do direct grain transfers, but using the various mechanisms we've talked about before. But it's going to come down to largely trust-based transfers, like, hey Joe, send me 1,000 DEC and I'll send you this much grain, and you're going to have to trust each other to send it back and forth, which is also a high-risk situation to be in if you're not readily familiar with the person, right? So anyway, that's this kind of a side comment. I've always, since I started planning, even though I don't own a castle or keep, I always want to be in a situation where within the same region, I'm leveled off and self-supportive. In other words, the lands I have mining SPS and or Pretoria researching that, then I also want to have enough plots of land staked well enough, growing grain to offset all of those. So if you're running a castle or keep that's heavily staked out, you're going to have multiple other lands. Obviously, as the castle or keep, you're going to draw in a certain amount of grain. But at the beginning, are you going to be able to draw in enough on taxes to pay on a daily basis for your workers? I don't know. That remains to be seen. Myself, I would be prepared to grow enough grain to support your castle or keep, and then when it all goes down and everything looks good, everything's up and running, and you have a week or 2 or 3 weeks worth of numbers that you can make decisions on, then you can always unstake and change the way each of your other plots is being used, and then go for there, because there's going to be a lot of variables. And as myself and a lot of the other YouTube contributors have been talking about, up front, it's probably going to start out a small amount of percentage of lands that are staked out. It's going to grow over time. That's obvious, right? But once again, if you get into the beginning, you stand to make the best percentages, especially with that SPS, right? We found out that there's not going to be any direct sale market right off the bat for grain. So you're going to use that largely to average out your land usage, like I said, and not necessarily be able to slap a bunch of grain on the market and make a bunch of money right off the bat. So, that's I've covered that in a different video, but I just figured I'd mention that. So kudos out to Garut for putting in this comment. Thank you. I hope that answers your question. I largely left it and did not do a lot of content around castles and keeps because I didn't have one. And I figured that if you are going in on a castle or keep, you probably read up on it. But hey, what can I say? This has been Bronze Dragon with a little castle and keep information. Hopefully it's been helpful to some people. Leave comments if you have a castle or keep and you have a specific strategy you're going to go into 1.5 with. Leave a comment. We'll talk about it. Hope everyone on your side's been happy and healthy. This has been Bronze Dragon, and I will see you on the flip side.